Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Urban Farmer Podcast. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Now let's jump right into it. It's a flashback, The Urban Farmer, as originally recorded 10 years ago with myself and farmer Curtis Stone. Welcome to the Urban Farmer, week 24. It's currently August 18th, 2015, and through the first 23 episodes of this show, we've dedicated a few episodes to working with chefs and selling to restaurants. That being said, for a lot of people, selling to restaurants is intimidating. Let's face it, for most people, in any business, selling is harder than producing a product. A lot of us just don't plain like to sell, or at least it makes us uncomfortable. Knowing that, we've tried to remove a lot of that intimidation by talking about what's worked and what hasn't worked for Curtis. We've taken you behind the scenes. You can use that knowledge to then formulate a plan for your situation to give yourself an approach that has a good chance of success. Selling matters. It's important stuff, and selling to restaurants can be a great primary or secondary revenue stream. At this point in his farming career, Curtis's primary customer base is restaurants. That isn't by accident. It's that way because it's lucrative to sell to restaurants. But to take advantage of that, you need to know some of the basics. In previous episodes, we've talked a lot about meeting with chefs, building a rapport, and asking for critical feedback. These are more relationship aspects of working with restaurants. But establishing those relationships for that revenue stream are only one piece of the puzzle. There's also execution. Because once that relationship is established, you have to be able to service those restaurants. And as a farmer, that means providing the products that the restaurant wants and delivering those products in a timely manner. To do that, the chef needs to be able to order the product from you. But how do they know what you have to offer so they can order it? As a farmer, how do you communicate what you have to sell each week, how much it costs, and when chefs need to place orders by so you can deliver it on time? To do all that, you use what's called a fresh sheet. At its simplest, a fresh sheet is a list of what you're currently selling on your farm and for what price. A fresh sheet's more than a current inventory list. It provides multiple functions. It also reminds those ever-busy chefs that you have a product that they probably want.
Essentially what it does that I find is very effective is it prompts orders because it's like a friendly reminder to be like, hey, don't forget to place your order kind of thing.
If you've never made a fresh sheet before, this episode may prompt you to make one. It's a whole bunch of little tips and tricks to help you design, create, and maintain an effective fresh sheet. Let's get into it and start with the basics. What's a fresh sheet?
It's sort of an email correspondence program I send out every week to display what I'm selling to all my chefs. So I send it out every Monday. I use a program called MailChimp, and I basically just replicate the same campaign over and over again. And then I add if I have a new item, I just add it to it. I put in a new photograph each time, and I make it mobile friendly. So it's easy to view on their phone, and just blast it out to I got 21 customers on there or something. And, just saying, hey, this is what I have. These are the prices. Oh, and then I'll always have a thing at the beginning of it that's sort of, any news on the farm, like, hey, we've got lots of this week, or here's a new item we have this week, or something like that.
Is it one of those things where simpler is better?
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't want it to be too wordy, right to the point. Essentially what it does that I find is very effective is it prompts orders because it's like a friendly reminder to be like, hey, don't forget to place your order kind of thing. It's really important at a time like now because the farm is at peak production. We have so much coming off that we have to sell twice a week. Like I do downtown deliveries to chefs on Tuesdays, and then I do some winery deliveries on Wednesday, and then I do deliveries to everywhere on Friday. So I'm delivering 3 times a week on that Wednesday. I'm also delivering a really big order to a distributor that I sell to. So it's to kind of keep things flowing. There's so much production coming off, yeah, the chefs are busy, right? And especially in like peak tourist season, they've got so much going on that if you don't prompt them, sometimes they just forget to order. It's not necessarily that they don't want to, it's they forget. And it's a very competitive market here. So other farmers are coming in all the time, and sometimes chefs just see what's in front of them. And so if you're not constantly staying on top of it, you can lose market share pretty quickly.
It's interesting that you said that, and that's one thing I wanted to ask you about is some of these customers have been ordering from you now for 20 something weeks or maybe even longer. And I was curious at how much the fresh sheet actually drives sales each week, but it sounds like they're busy. So if you didn't keep issuing that fresh sheet on a consistent basis, are you putting it out twice a week?
No, just once.
So you put it out every Monday. If you weren't doing it every Monday, then it sounds like you'd have a lot less sales.
Possibly. I mean, for my really core customers, like I have kind of 7 restaurants that are always ordering. They would probably order, but there's been times in the past, like last year, for example, I went through a really transitional year. Like I was starting up fresh again after being in a partnership. Also broke up with a long-term girlfriend who was integrated into the business. Last year I was kind of struggling to just keep up, even though I had my best season, not including this one, of course. But there were times last year where I would forget to put out my fresh sheet. And one thing I found this year is like I'm up over 30% of my sales this year. I haven't changed anything as far as I'm on the same amount of land. I've changed things in my production a little bit. I'm on the same amount of land, but I'm selling a lot more. And I'm pretty sure a lot of it has to do with its consistency with my fresh sheets. I'm very rigid about scheduling now. It's like Monday morning, I must spend 1 hour doing these things, like fresh sheet, sending out a notice to my landowners and people that I trade with, what vegetables I have. And that consistency has definitely brought in more sales. There's no question about it.
So every Monday morning, you'll sit down, you'll create the fresh sheet, and then you'll email it off to the chefs. How do you determine what goes on the fresh sheet? Are you just knowing a couple things, what's in your head of what's out in the field? And also, do you look on your spreadsheet and just say, okay, here's what I know I'm going to have this week?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, essentially what I do is I always replicate the campaign. So I have a campaign made. It has like last week's fresh sheet. It has everything that I had on there last week. So basically when I replicate that, I just go into it and I edit. Okay. It's like, oh, I don't have golden beets this week, but I have carrot. So I add carrot. There's always the foundation of the stuff that I've had, in previous emails. And so I'm just adding and subtracting the odd thing here and there. That's really what it is. I mean, as far as what I know I have in the field and what I can offer to chefs, one thing that I find, that I do, which has served me well in strategy, is only listing things that I know I have a lot of. Like if I only have, say I had a short harvest of carrots one week, say I only harvested 70 pounds or something, and normally I would have had 100. I might not list the carrots on the fresh sheet that week, but I'll probably just let my closest customers know. They're the ones that would always buy them. Because sometimes I made this mistake many times in the past, is you just list everything that you have on your fresh sheet, and then you get 4 orders for the thing that you have the least amount of. And now you're screwing yourself over, because now you're having to follow up with all these chefs and say, oh, sorry, I'm short on this. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to be short on things. It's better to just not list it and maybe text a couple people that you think are most likely to take it. And go from there. And yes, I mean, I guess I'm kind of prioritizing certain customers over others, but I mean, that's just the nature of business. So some customers that will spend $10,000 a year on my farm, naturally are going to have a little bit more priority as far as where I'm selling my stuff, or customers that are paying me consistently more often, to prioritize them or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. One point where I see where it might get a little confusing is this whole idea of items that you're low on. So if you know that you normally have 100 pounds of carrots and this week you only have 70, you keep it off. Are you just kind of using trends to say, okay, every week in July, I'm usually selling 100 pounds of carrots. So I know if I don't have at least 90, I'm not going to put it on the fresh sheet. In other words, are you using trends to kind of say, okay, my inventory is within an acceptable range, so it goes on the fresh sheet?
Yeah, totally. I'm using previous year trends, and I'm also using previous week trends. Like once I'm into the main season, I'm not so much looking at what I was doing last year. At the beginning of the season, I look at what I did last year, because I'm looking to use that to speculate ahead, to be like, okay, what are people going to be demanding in July this year? Say it's in May, and I'm looking ahead. That's also a strategy I use to plan my farm. But the other thing is just looking at, okay, what did so-and-so order last week? Okay. And then I look at what they did the last couple weeks. Like some restaurants, in fact, most of my restaurants are very consistent. They want the same thing pretty much week in and week out. Like once I get into the main season from say July until mid-September, that's the point where, everything that's going to be available on my farm with the crops that I grow is available. So from July until mid-September, I've got all the tomatoes. I've got, all of my summer crops available. I have all of my greens and everything's available. So at that point, when I'm into that, I just look at previous weeks and go, okay, I can expect that they'll order this. And so what I do at the beginning of my week, like I work a lot on my computer, actually, especially, I mean, even I'm working on my computer even more now because I have a guy who's pretty much running the farm. Like he does mostly everything, like planting, or it was the last thing that I would have delegated is planting, but he's doing that now. So I'm doing a lot of speculating, and it's actually helped me move a lot more product this year because I'm looking at my previous weeks, and then I have a separate little spreadsheet. This stuff is going to be in my book too, if people are curious specifically what I'm talking about. I mean, it's also in the online course, but it will be in my book in November. Current orders and then previous orders. So I'll actually go in these spreadsheets and copy and paste my previous week of all the restaurants and paste it into my current orders. As I receive orders from them, I'll amend them and then, keep them there. And then, because some chefs, they're just always late. Like they're consistently late to order, and I have to prompt them with text messages or whatever. But I'll use that framework to estimate what I need to harvest, because sometimes, like in the summer here, we harvest every day of the week, but for our Friday deliveries, we start to harvest things on Wednesday. And so I don't get my restaurant orders until Thursday morning, and that's what my fresh sheet tells them to do. So I have to kind of speculate, because I can't wait until Thursday morning to get all those orders because we have too much stuff to harvest. So I got to start harvesting before I get orders. And so I'm just speculating on what I did last week in order to do that.
In terms of placing orders on Thursday, is it they can't place an order before Thursday?
They can place the order. It's just I need to have it in at the latest by Thursday morning.
And do you explicitly say that on the fresh sheet itself?
Yeah, like I say on the fresh sheet, for things are first come, first serve. At the same time, I have some customers that say, bring me this no matter what. If you don't hear otherwise, bring me this. And so then I don't necessarily need to have their order to do that. There's other customers too. Like I have a couple of different distributors I sell to, but one of them, he's always late getting his orders in because he runs a pretty big business, and he'll say to me in the previous week, okay, bank on me for this. I mean, I won't get my order to you until a little bit later, but bank that I'll have this. And so I'll always kind of put that aside for him and assume that he's going to take that, and then kind of just go from there, use that as a framework to get out in the field and start harvesting some stuff.
And how do they explicitly place the order? Are they texting it? Are they emailing it? They call you?
Yeah, all of the above. One thing that's phone calling is the worst because then I don't have it written down. And I mean, sometimes new chefs that I'm dealing with, they'll like to call because they like to shoot the breeze and stuff. And, they're learning about your farm and that's totally cool. And so as I'm talking to them, I'll say, hey, can you text this to me? Or would you mind emailing this to me? In some cases, if it's like a really simple order, I'll wrap up that conversation. I'll just immediately put it into my voice recorder. Or, I mean, I have an iPhone, so I have Siri. And so I'll just go into my notes. Like I have a note in my phone called Field Sheet, and it's sort of just like any notes that's happening on the farm. And so I might just click in there and go, so-and-so's order, blah, 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 blah. And that actually pops up on my computer. So when I go in to do office time, I pull up my notes that sync to my phone and it's right there. And so then I just plug it into my spreadsheets from there.
What would you do without phones and everything going through the cloud? It's just insane the technology benefit there.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Like before I started really utilizing, I must say, since the advent of that Siri on the iPhones, it saves me a considerable amount of time. Like it's very noticeable. And I didn't start using it until this year. Last year, I would have to type everything in my phone and that's a pain in the ass because my hands are dirty on the farm. Like flipping around on my phone. I don't want to do that. I'd rather navigate it through my voice. That way I can be multitasking. Like I'll be loading up my truck and then I get a phone call from a chef and then I'm like loading stuff up and then I'm talking that into my phone and then it's all synced to my computer. It's pretty cool. It does save you a lot of time.
In terms of technology and using software to your advantage, you said you take previous week's orders, paste them into this week's orders, and you modify them as they come in. If the chef previously put in an order for 50 pounds of salad mix, and this week it comes in for 5, do you go back to them and question, say, hey, are you really sure? Did you really mean just order 5 or did you mean 50?
Oh, absolutely. For sure. There's definitely a line of communication there. I mean, and also too, it's like a chef will send you an order on Thursday morning and then she'll text you later in the day and be like, hey, can you add this? Or hey, can you scratch this and put this in? And it's just kind of, you just work with them the best you can. And I mean, the thing that I really offer as an advantage being an urban farmer opposed to other farmers is I'm so lean. My business is so small and so lean and flexible that it's really easy for me to switch things around. I don't have a ton of staff. I don't have lots of things like, for example, like in a big kitchen, they've got there's like 5 to 10 prep cooks, the sous chefs. There's like so many different types of people. When something gets changed, you have to have a whole line of command that gets notified of that change. And so one of the biggest advantages of being a small farm with a very lean operating system or crew is that things can change really quickly without much interference into the day-to-day operations.
For your Friday orders, you send out the fresh sheet on Monday. They have to place orders by Thursday. How do you handle deliveries earlier in the week that aren't happening on Friday?
Well, I say, so on my fresh sheet, I say, like if people are going to order for early week, they're probably going off the last week's fresh sheet. And so I just say on the fresh sheet, there's a little note on the bottom that says, for Tuesday orders, we need your order by Monday morning. For Friday orders, we need your order by Thursday morning. So we always try to get 24 hours at least.
And, kind of in regards to that, you're in a partnership here with the chefs. It seems like it's not strictly I just want to sell you product type relationship. There's kind of a checks and balances going back and forth, and you're trying to make sure that they're getting the right thing, getting what they want, because you're in it for the long game. So are they. How do you deal with working with the chefs during the week to remind them to place an order, those types of things without being a pain in the ass?
You kind of just have to be a pain in the ass. It's kind of just the reality of it. And most chefs will tell you that, like, don't feel bad about nagging me because they've just got so many things coming at them. You don't want to be a real pain in the ass. Most of my chefs who are the ones that are always forgetting to place the order, when I send them a text that says, "Hey, just checking in about your order," they say, "Oh, thanks for the reminder, dude." Like they're usually appreciative of that, because there are times, I've been in situations where you didn't follow up, and then they were pissed off because they they just thought that you were going to bring stuff. Like there's often a lot of assumptions, but and that's just because they have so much on their plate. They're balancing they're balancing ordering, they're balancing staff, they're balancing the managing of the restaurant, dealing with servers, whatever it is, designing of a new menu. Like executive chefs, it's a really big job and a stressful job. So I'm pretty sympathetic with that. Like I get it. So, I just do my best to just send friendly reminders. It's text messaging. Like, one thing I do too is like, so I have my fresh sheet that goes out on the email. And what I do is there's, when you send out a campaign in MailChimp, you can say like, publish a little link, like sort of a shrunken down link that might just be like 10 characters or something like that. I'll copy and paste that into the notes. I have a note on my phone that just says like current fresh sheet. So if I have a chef that's texting me, maybe he didn't get the email or he didn't check his email, I can just copy and paste that and just text it to him right there. And then he can click on it. Boom, opens it up. He has it right there. Because sometimes it's going back and forth. Like, oh, do you have this? Do you have that? It's like, oh, here's just the fresh sheet. Check it out.
I get it. I totally get how these guys and women are so busy in the kitchen. Along those lines, you said simplest is best in terms of the fresh sheet. I know this sounds like kind of a overly detailed question, but like, what exactly are you listing on there? Kind of the minimum viable amount of information.
I've kind of categories. I have greens, summer crops, herbs, microgreens, roots. And then so like greens, okay, arugula, $10 a pound. Spring mix, I might have in parentheses saying what's in the mix that week. The price. It's pretty simple. I don't have a description of each product in there. That would take too much text. What I do is when I introduce a new product to the fresh sheet, I'll feature that on the top with a picture of it, and then I'll have a description of it there. And so it'll just, like, I'll just familiarize them with it once, and then it'll just get listed. I might mention it a couple times or something if it's a brand new product or something totally new. But I don't do that too often, right? It's like, there's the things that come on seasonally, and then there's a reminder about that coming on seasonally. But then other than that, it's just listed as a regular item. But it's pretty stripped down, like, because this thing is mobile friendly, it's as narrow as your iPhone screen. So the text is, it's big enough that you can see it relatively easy. But, there's like the word spring mix, and then the price, and then that's one line. And then underneath there might be something in parentheses, but not usually. It's very easy to follow and simple.
Yeah, like the whole less is more, because I'm sure you could see people spending hours trying to design these sheets with graphics and huge descriptions.
Yeah, you can't go too crazy with the graphics. I mean, I have a simple format, and I just replicate it every time now. I mean, yeah, when I first set it up, it took quite a bit of time to learn how to use the program and everything. But now it's like very stock. It's like the top of the fresh sheet has my logo, my phone number, and then there's a picture. I always do a featured picture. In the springtime, it's usually like pictures of the farm that's like, hey, check this out. This is stuff happening. In the summer, I'm just featuring products. I spent quite a bit of time with my girlfriend doing a lot of really, really high end product shots for everything on the farm. And so I've got so many photographs now that I just cycle those in, and it really makes it easy, because I used to do it pretty inefficiently. I'd be like, oh, I need a photo. I'd go and like try to take a photo. I'd end up spending 3 hours making a fresh sheet, which is ridiculous. Now it takes me 10 minutes. It's just like drag in a new photo, put a couple lines in the news thing, update any new items or take out any items that you don't have this week. Done. Send. It's finished.
So you blast that out, the orders come in, and say you have a quantity X for a product. When it comes time to harvest, do you typically try and harvest like 1.1x, just figuring somebody's going to bump it up in order, or do you go a little short, figuring somebody might reduce? How do you do that?
You always go over. I mean, that's the beauty of having a farmer's market in your mix, is the farmer's market's always the overflow. So, I'm always going to bring a certain amount to a farmer's market or target a certain amount, but that's the overflow. It's like, okay, if I got an extra 5 pounds of greens that I harvested that didn't get ordered to the restaurants, they just go to the farmer's market. Or in some cases too, because we have these early week orders, I'll just sit on product and I know I'll sell it on Monday or Tuesday. Like I'm delivering on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I have chefs picking up on Mondays and Thursdays too. So we're selling something every single day of the week. So there's always an outlet. So if I had extra product, I sit on it for 2 more days and it's not a big deal. I mean, this is why you got to have walk-in coolers as a farm. You need to have good cold storage that allows you to prolong the marketing period of your product. And that's absolutely critical.
For the people that do pickup orders during the week and they get a Friday delivery, do you just give them an invoice on Friday, or do you give them an invoice every single time they get a product?
I invoice them every single time, unless it's like a customer that I've known for a long time and it was a really impromptu order and I wasn't able to, I didn't want to go back in the office. Like say I was really busy, because I have it sometimes where I get a chef that I know really well and that I trust, they'll, hey, sorry, but is it possible that I can get 4 bags of arugula in an hour? And it's like, if I can't do it, I can't do it. If I can, it's like, oh yeah, hey, you know what? We had some ready. I'll bag it up right now. I'll leave it in the cooler with your name on it. You just come get it whenever you can. I'll add it to the invoice on Friday. Absolutely. I do that in some cases. Most of the time though, I've tried to set up my operation where I'm at my home base most of the time. Like people that work for me, I go to my other plots as well, of course, but I try to be here most of the time. And my office is here and the base of operations is here because there's a lot of work I can do from home. So I try to be here so that, I can fire off invoices really quickly, amend orders, adjust the planting schedule, whatever it is. I'm working on my computer a lot in and out throughout the day.
In terms of the invoicing itself, do you do that electronically, or is that done via paper?
Oh, I don't do it by hand. I have an accounting software I use, just like QuickBooks.
Were you printing something out and giving it to them, or you just email it?
I print it out. I haven't quite figured out how to do it's just going to take me kind of a day to sit down and do it. I'd like to do it to go paperless, but right now I just print out. I have like a LaserJet printer and I just print out 2 copies. They sign one, I keep one, or they get one, I keep the signed one, kind of thing. And everybody they all know how I do that. And so it's like, if I leave an order in my fridge that a chef comes to pick up, I'll leave a clipboard and a pen with the 2 invoices on it. They sign one, they take the other one. They all know the routine. That's how I do it though. I like having a software for invoicing because it makes it really fast because everything's quick keys. So I just pre-program all of the items that I have. And so like with 1 or 2 strokes, I can put in the amount and the item with like 2 keystrokes. And so it's really fast. I used to hand bomb invoices, and God, like when you total up that time it takes over the course of a season, it's probably like 10 hours that you would waste writing hand invoices. So, and I see most farmers do that because I go to my restaurant customers and there's often like an invoice box they have where you just like put the invoice of the product you drop off. And I can see all the other farmers' invoices and they're all hand bombed. It's just like all meticulously written out. It probably took them 2 minutes or 3 minutes to write each invoice. Whereas for me, it's like 20 seconds. Bang, bang, bang. A few keystrokes, done, print, next. I just blast these things off. And then that's one thing that I try to do on my farm is like, when you got to get things done that are routine, do them fast. Let's do it fast. Get it done. Like you got to go and do some errands that you need to do. Like maybe it's like some business stuff, maybe it's some banking stuff. Maybe it's, you got to send out some statements to some chefs that owe you money. Do it fast, blast it out, get it done. Don't sit there and just like think about it and just blast it out, just get it done. Because these things can really eat up a lot of time if you don't, especially if you don't have systems for them. And so it's good to get systems in place. That way it'll allow you to blast things out and just get it done. And the fresh sheet, just going back to what we started talking about originally, that's one thing that it used to take. I would spend 2 hours a week on a fresh sheet. Now it's like 5-10 minutes. Do it fast, get it done, blast it out. It's not that important. Like even if you don't, maybe you forgot to add an item, big deal, just get it done. Because sometimes it's like, you can just send, like often what a chef will do too is they'll just order what they had last week. And so if you don't have that thing or you forgot to list it, it's just like, oh, hey, I do have this. Do you want it? I forgot to put it on the chef fresh sheet. This is one thing that using Siri on my iPhone really helps me with, is I do all my text messaging by voice. So it's really fast because I'm multitasking. I'm planting a bed of arugula while sending the text message by voice. And so, I can overlap these things. And so just getting things done, just when you add up the time you'd waste on it throughout the season by taking your time, really adds up at the end.
Yeah, right on. It's one of those things that's came up over and over through all these episodes is crank stuff out, get a system down, and try and make it as efficient as possible, and don't waste time doing stuff that doesn't really lead to production and doesn't lead to sales. You still have to do it, but systemize it as much as you can. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, one thing that's came up a few times through a couple of these episodes is this whole idea of selling to distributors. And I think that is probably the most foreign to a lot of people out there that want to go into farming. Do you send your fresh sheet also to a distributor each week, or how do you handle that relationship?
Yeah, that's a different relationship. No, the distributors don't get my fresh sheets, mainly because they order volume that's like far above what restaurants order. And it's often done in a different way. Like, for example, I sell to these two distributors and they both run a CSA. Like one of them is an aggregator CFA. And then the other one is a distributor who just sells general produce to like grocery stores, high-end restaurants in the Rocky Mountains. And he also runs a CFA. So, sometimes I'm packing him 100 units of spinach, like I would take to a farmer's market or something like that. So I don't send him the fresh sheet. He gets his own fresh sheet, basically. I don't send it in MailChimp. It happens through email. It's kind of like, what can you do for me next week? It's like, okay, I'm going to have this, and I'll have a lot of this, not so much of that, so on and so forth. It's sort of a separate relationship just because the volume is so different. Like these orders are, $1,500 at a time kind of thing. So, but there's less variety. It's more like, I'll grow specific things for this customer, like salad turnips. I grow most of the salad turnips I grow go to him. So, it's just a slightly different relationship based on the volume, and it's a different price point too. Like sometimes, he'll get a better price because he's ordering just huge volume of a particular crop. And so that's easy for me because it makes it simple for me to plan my farm, because I know I'm guaranteed to sell X amount of this product per week without having to market it, without having to list it in my fresh sheets or anything like that. I know that he and she will buy these things week in and week out.
How did you originally get involved with distributors? Did they contact you or did you seek them out?
Yeah, they contacted me.
Do you have any tips for people that want to try and get into working with distributors? It's lucrative in the sense that they can buy a lot of product in one shot. I guess let me change the question up a little bit. Do you find that most distributors that you've worked with have been consistent in their orders? Meaning, can you bank on large orders week in and week out, or is it kind of erratic?
It's a tough question because it just depends on the person. I've sold to a few different distributors, actually. I've also sold to grocery stores and just like kind of generic retail outlets. It just depends on how well greased of a machine they're operating, really. some customers that I've worked with for many years, when they started, it was really erratic, but now they've built their business just like mine, and they get to a point where they're just a lot more consistent. And so you get there. And I mean, that's kind of the cool thing about running a business like this, is that you grow with your customers, right? Like, they're learning as well, and they're getting better at it as well. And so you both benefit from each other's experience. So it gets better over time. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely had some distributor and retail customers that were just a horror story to work with, because there's just no consistency. Not necessarily always on a fault of their own, because they're also at the whim of their customers as well. There's sort of a chain of customers in there. And so it's hard to say. Yeah, I definitely find the better they operate their business, the more consistent they're going to be.
Well, here's another one that's going to require some generalization. In terms of selling products to distributors, where do they rank in terms of price that they're going to pay, given that they're buying volume? If you're selling tomatoes at $6 a pound at a farmer's market, where are restaurants and then where are distributors in relation to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the distributor. Like, there's only certain distributors I can work with. Like, I can't, and there's only certain products I can sell to distributors. Like, my main guy that I sell to, I can't sell him tomatoes because he can't give me a price that works for me. So I sell tomatoes to restaurants. I can sell him greens. I can sell him baby root vegetables. I can't sell him carrots because his price doesn't work for me. I can sell him microgreens because his price works. You kind of find out what works and what doesn't, and you go with the products that make sense to market to them or not. And so, and that all comes through communication, and it's easy to talk to a customer and then they throw us some numbers and then you just write them off. Oh no, he can't meet me on my price. But it's like, no, you got to go back and forth. You got to communicate, try to work with that person and try to see, okay, where's the price point on each item? You can't just have a broad conversation about a general price or percentage and say, let's meet there, because sometimes with some products, there's more wiggle room. Like with greens, I have more wiggle room because I can produce so much in a small amount of space and they have a high turnover, that a customer who's willing to buy 50 pounds a week, there's more wiggle room on the price point. Same with, say, radishes or salad turnips. I can produce so many of those things so quickly, such high turnover, that I can wiggle on the price. Whereas something like tomatoes, it's not really worth it for me to wiggle on the price. One, based on what the current price points are. And another is that the tomato requires a lot of preliminary work to get to that end result of a product. I got to start that plant in February. I'm going to get potted up once or twice. It's going to get transplanted. It's going to get pruned every week for an hour or two each week, like our whole tomato crop. There's a lot of work that goes into those. The picking is the easiest part. So there's just not a lot of wiggle room in price there. So it's like those types of crops I won't sell to others, but things like microgreens and greens, especially microgreens, I can scale up quickly. And, it's a 14-day cycle. So if somebody wants to commit to a lot, there's a lot of wiggle room in price if they're willing to move a lot of volume for me.
Of your total business, roughly what part of it's distributors?
I would say 25, 30%.
Okay, so quite a bit.
There's one distributor I sell to pretty much on the shoulder seasons in the winter, because I just exclusively grow microgreens for them. And then the other one I sell to, he's a seasonal, like he's a more of a summer, main season type distributor. And so, he's a huge customer. Like he spends, maybe it's around 20%. It's a little different this year because I've taken on a couple of their restaurant customers that are huge. So the numbers have changed a little bit this year. I haven't really had the time to look back at how it's all balanced out. But, I mean, there's no doubt that restaurants and distributors take up about 90% of what my farm does. Like the farmer's market's it's gone down to about 10% of what our overall take is.
That's interesting. And it just shows that there's a lot of potential out there to sell product beyond the standard channels, CSAs, farmers markets. And if there's distributors in your area and if you can get in with them and get a relationship going, there's the potential for them to buy a lot of product. And it sounds like it can be pretty lucrative to do that.
It is no doubt that it can, but it's also very risky. Like a friend of mine has an old saying, the higher the stakes, the greater the takes. So it's just like, things that are high yielding are often high risk. Anybody who understands economics knows that too. I've definitely been burned a few times where, one person says, oh, I'll take this much every week. And then they totally flake out and you've planted way too much. So you have to be careful. And, they'll often require a considerable amount of volume. So you have to be careful on your end that you don't burn them, that you say you can provide X amount of product and then, you're only showing up with half of what you said you could. You've got to be careful there. I mean, I don't recommend anybody that's just in their first or maybe even second year of farming, unless they're really confident, get into doing these kinds of businesses, unless you find one that's small scale or one that's easy to work with or whatever. But you have to be very careful about taking on those kinds of commitments because, you can burn a bridge pretty quick if you're shorting somebody consistently and you're causing them a lot of grievance. That customer can disappear pretty quick.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this whole idea of, high reward, high risk, I think you could also say, the farmers markets aren't guaranteed sales either. You're still spending a lot of time competing against all those other vendors to try and move stuff. So, is it really that much safer at the end of the day type thing?
No, that's a really good point. And the thing with the farmers market that can really suck is that, a bad day at the market, say you bring $1,000 of product to the market and you sell 200 and you go home with $800 of product that was individually packaged, that's a lot of labor wasted. Not only is it a lot of product wasted, a lot of plastic wasted, but it's a lot of labor too. So there's, in a way, what you're saying is a really accurate point in that, sometimes, if you're sitting on an excess of 20 pounds of greens that you didn't sell, but they're loose and you didn't sell them, opposed to 20 pounds of excess pre-packaged 4-ounce bags of greens. Yeah. Not selling the 20 pounds of loose greens that wasn't packaged is a lot better of a loss than spending an hour or two or whatever it would take to bag those greens than to, lose the loose stuff.
Yeah, one key takeaway I think that I've arrived at throughout a lot of these episodes is be very diverse in your customer base. So while you're selling 90% of your product to restaurants and distributors, you're still involved with the farmers markets. You've done CSAs before. And if one of those pieces of pie expands or contracts, you have the ability to go down one of those other avenues to compensate for that. So you're not just all in on restaurants. And if one or two big customers go away, then you're screwed. You have an established relationship at the farmers markets. You have enough understanding of CSAs and you could probably draw up enough customers to go that route if you needed to. So you think that for somebody new that they really need to try and attack more than one outlet at the beginning, or is that kind of also a recipe for disaster and you're not focusing?
It's a tough question because it just depends on what market streams are available for that person, and just kind of just to go off on what you said there. Yes, say the majority of my business is restaurants, but I'm also very diversified in my customer base there. So it's unlikely that, it's highly unlikely that all the restaurants are going to go out of business at once, right? Restaurants definitely come and go, but it's super improbable that all of them are going to go at once. So I'm still very diversified in my customer base. I have, 3 different market outlets being distributors, restaurants, and farmers markets, and previously CSAs. But even within that customer that restaurant customer, which is absolutely the largest demographic in my market stream, it's still very diversified. There's many different types of restaurants there, different sizes, and there's a lot of them. There's probably almost 20 different restaurants that we're selling to in there.
Did you consciously think about that when you were, adding or subtracting restaurant customers? Because I think that makes a lot of sense. You have a diversity of customers within a certain category. Like, do you ever sit back and look at your customers and say, okay, am I too exposed to one customer? Am I too exposed to one market here, and try and make yourself more resilient?
Absolutely. Because I've been really burned that way. I mean, sometimes you just kind of, you get a customer that's just huge and buying a lot of stuff, and you kind of just ride it out and just kind of look at it as in like, okay, this is just gravy right now. And it's gonna, you kind of have to have the attitude that you expect the worst, but you plan, like you plan for the worst, then you just hope for the best. Because I've been burned that way for sure. Like my second year of farming, I took on this one restaurant that was ordering like 10 times more than everybody else was. Like their orders were about $1,000 a week. And that was crazy for me because up until that point, $100 order from a restaurant was really getting me stoked. Like, yeah, I got 5 $100 orders. This is awesome. Like that was good. Like I was happy with that. And then I'd go into a few $100 to $500 at a farmer's market or something. So like that was good. I was doing like, $1,000 a week in sales. Back then that was really great. And then all of a sudden to have a customer that comes on that's like, we want 50 pounds of greens. We want 30 pounds of beef, 20 pounds of, it's like, holy shit. It's like, and so you're just trying to catch up to that. And then, I had that customer for a couple of years, and then boom, management change, chef change, menu change, nothing. And then you're like, wow, what happened there? So, I mean, I'm at the point now where I've got pretty established relationships with my steady customers that are big customers that I'm pretty safeguarded in the sense that if one of them were to leave, I immediately know other places that I can move that product because I'm in a pretty fortunate position. I wouldn't say it's fortunate. It's just I worked for it, but I'm in a position where I've got so much demand that because people want to work with our farm. They like what we're about. They like the service that we offer. Like we really focus on customer service and convenience, that there's a lot of people waiting to get our product. I've had to say no to probably about 5 new restaurants this year. So, it's just a matter of picking up the phone and the message there too is that in order to sell that stuff, you have to spend time off your farm so that you can work on those sales. And that's one thing that I've done a lot of this year is really worked on the customer service end and the sales end, because I am not working 40 hours a week on the farm. I'm working 10 to 20 hours a week on the farm, but I'm spending more time in the office planning, organizing, and focusing on customer service and sales, that we're just selling more product because of it.
Yeah, I love that you have the relationship there between the office time that you've spent doing more office time, that is, in more sales. Because I kind of think, okay, people want to sell more, so they want to spend more time out in the field growing more, when really, if you want to sell more, you do it in that office time.
Yeah. And you do it in the restaurants when you go in there and you go into the kitchen and you talk to the executive chef. That's what it is. Like when I deliver, sometimes I go to some of my, oldest customers and I sit in their office and shoot the breeze for a half an hour. Right. Like I focus on being that person that is constantly striving to offer more value to them, more convenience, more products that they're interested in. And also just being generally interested in what they're doing. Just being a person who enjoys working with them and really values their relationship. And I see that because I know who the competition is for me out here. I know a lot of these farmers, a lot of them are my friends, and the ones that are struggling to get restaurant sales, just don't have the people skills that are necessary, not necessarily required, but they definitely help to have people skills to talk to people and, go in and make good relationships and, be able to have a laugh with people and, to be a person that they enjoy being around. But I've worked on those interpersonal things for much of my life. And so, that was a big advantage I had coming into running this farm.
It's one of those things, it's the little things that make all the difference. And I've been around business long enough now to know that it doesn't take a whole lot to stand out and above from the average. You don't have to put in a lot of extra effort to be above average in a lot of things, because so many people are just on autopilot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's hilarious. I mean, you and I have gone into these rants and stuff before, but sometimes you get into these things. It's like, why are people like this? This sucks because this and this, and this. People should be like this. But then just all you got to do is think about, no, it's great because most people don't really give a shit, or they don't want to hustle. It's like, oh wow, this is awesome now, because if you just hustle a little bit, you're already ahead of like 80% of the world. So it's just like, man, it's great. It's easy to dominate in the world because so many people are so entitled and don't want to work hard. They just want just to kind of get by or whatever. It's like, okay, if you step it up just a little bit, just turn the dial to 6, when everybody's riding 2, it's not too hard to separate yourself from the majority of your competition.
That's it. Show up consistently and be engaged. And that's more than most people ever do.
Totally.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Urban Farmer. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.